Welcome to the Lifewriting podcast, where married authors and screenwriters Stephen Barnes
and Tananarive do talk about writing during stressful times, breaking into Hollywood, and balancing life.
Every week, we'll share more tips on how to build a better life while you create your dream projects.
Even if it's only at the rate of one sentence a day. Life writing is the application of the tools of writing to life and the tools of life to your writing.
Fantastic. So, yay, here we are. I didn't even get my sound effects cued this week. I'm so excited about this week's guest, Rachel True. We will talk about her a little bit more. Can't wait to talk to her, actress and the author of a new book on tarot, which I don't know much about. So I
can't wait. Archetypes.
Yeah, I'm planning to learn a lot from this. But first, Steve, why don't we just talk about what's going on with you this week, my dear?
Oh, well, I finally got my copies of my book.
Yay! Oh, I need to get my
which is,
sound effects.
I've been working on this for trying to get it done for 10 years. And I'm very proud of it. And so, we've talked about it. It's an exploration of Buddha's Eightfold Path to Enlightenment as expressed in horror, science fiction, fantasy, stories, as if they were in an old-fashioned EC comic book, but they have a serious intent. And Charles Johnson, who helped me with that, I'm so grateful for the team around me. So I'm very, very happy about that. We're still dealing with negotiations on one project, and T, you said that you've just put the finishing touches on, what was it?
A pilot. It says a pilot. This is now our second revision, and we broke it wide open. We came from a different direction to help establish more of what the series feels like in progress, rather than, I think, treading water a little bit we had done in the previous draft. So we'll be turning that in today.
Very exciting. I think that my attitude was a little bit of shock and awe, that every time you turn in a script, there should be something that the reader does not expect. You don't just give them the things that you discussed. You give them a little something extra, because you remember that the person who is reading your script is also having an experience of having a story told to them. So I think that we've really done that this time. There's a bunch of things that we did not discuss with them that I think are just going to knock them out.
Surprise! Yeah. Sometimes you work very closely with the executives. In this case, we decided to try the shock and awe approach. We'll let you know how that works out.
That's right. Yeah.
We just actually finished an amazing meeting with our 18-year-old son. Every day we're homeschooling our son, Jason, as we've mentioned in previous podcasts. And every day we have a school meeting where we go over the assignments that are due. We discuss the work he's done. Steve, I wish I had a time machine to go back just this one time, to go back 3, 4, 1 even year ago, to let our past selves hear Jason discussing his economics assignment and brain function with us in the meeting today.
Absolutely.
It was so great.
But here's the whole thing. Here's the thing that's so beautiful. Okay, so Jason was diagnosed ADHD, and did the usual thing that everybody suggests. But at the beginning of the pandemic, we decided to make some changes. That if we were going to homeschool him, let me take a chance that there is within Jason that what we're getting is static on the line. It's not the signal, it's the static. And I thought, let's try it. Let's operate under the faith that the spirit that is our son is dying to get out of the definition. He doesn't want to be defined in that way. Let's define him as someone who is about to evolve, about to change, about to come out and play. Let's assume that within him is a genius, is just everything we could ever want, because all he really wants is to know that his parents look at him with that kind of faith and love. And he has blossomed amazingly. And after he graduates, we want to set him up with a business, and the business is going to be, he wants to be a coach. He said he wanted to be a coach. I've done that a lot. I've been life coaching stuff. And he wants to do that. And I think that the perfect thing would be for him to coach ADHD kids and families with ADHD kids into excellence. The title of a book course that I want to create for him, or create with him, or coach him into creating, is From ADHD to A's.
Yes.
Because that has been his journey. He now knows how to get A's when he wants to.
Right.
And it has been an amazing thing. and he wants to go to UCLA and get a PhD in psychology. Oh my God, knocked me out when I heard that last week.
Just whether or not he does that, just the fact that he's articulating that kind of a dream is a big difference from where he was, like I said, even a year ago. So, and this is a special note to parents out there for any of your kids that are on the spectrum. You know, that I know about those behavior issues that will come up in elementary school, especially middle school. Just hang on.
And remember,
have faith.
Yes, that in terms of the hero's journey, there is this thing called the dark night of the soul that we have alluded to, that on every journey you're going to reach a point where it feels like you have run out of options, that you're at the end of your road, there's no way you can reach your goal. And that happens in every story and every culture everywhere in the world, because that is the elders of the village trying to warn you that when you're on your journey, you're going to get knocked on your butt. And what gets you back up is faith. And it's always faith in one of three things: faith in yourself, faith in your companions, or faith in a higher power. And for Jason, all he had to do is to believe in himself. And if he couldn't believe in himself, believe that his mom and his dad, who were there with him every single day, believed in him and love him, period. He is safe in the world. He's gonna be safe. Now that you've got safe, we can forget about fear. How about thriving? And then believe that God made him to be a wonderful, contributing, loving, passionate, beautiful spirit. And if it doesn't matter which of those, but he had all three.
Yes.
And so we could get him through anything. So your writing or your creating or your art or whatever it is, when the next time you're watching a movie that you enjoy, look at the steps of the movie the way we talk about the steps of the hero's journey, and know that you are on your own journey, and we are with you every step of the way here on the Lifewriting Podcast.
There you go. That sounds great.
Was that tacky?
No, it's not tacky. This is what we're about. Hang in there, parents. Hang in there. That's all I can tell you. There is light at the end of the tunnel.
We've got such a great guest today. I really don't want to wait. I don't want to wait.
Okay, so we're not going to wait. Our guest today is, now many of you know her as an actress, Rachel True, of course, you know. So she was in The Craft, and also as Rochelle. Really the sole Black cast member, so a huge role model for a lot.
She was in our Shudder episode.
Yes, she was in Horror Noire. The Fugue State episode with Malcolm Barrett.
Yes, which we will so great
talk about. And also she's done a lot of other work in going back way back, Drew Carey show. She was in Half and Half. She's been but she's got some stuff coming up, but really, and we will talk about that. We absolutely will talk about, but she also wants to talk about her book, and we're going to talk to her about her book on tarot, True Heart Intuitive Tarot. It's a guidebook and a deck that she created, and now we get to invite her on the podcast, not as an actress, but as an author. Welcome to the podcast, Rachel True. Welcome. Woo! Good to see you. So glad you can make it.
I love the applause.
You didn't know we had a studio audience.
First of all, I just want to say thank you both so much for having me on your podcast, because I was saying this earlier. I'm lucky enough to have been able to say some of Tananarive's words, but I was a huge fan. So half the time I'm around these cats, I'm like, don't act like a fan. This is here that you are. Because it's a joy as a performer when you get to work with or for or around the people whose work you've read or respected or any of that. So also, I just love them as a couple. Come on, son.
Oh, thank you. Well,
but there's so many we've all been around couples where you're like, oh, I don't really want to go to dinner with them because they're kind of tense with each. You guys are the opposite. You guys are fun and loving with each other. And listening to your intro, I realize it may be older than you, but I really want you guys to adopt me.
Absolutely. We can absolutely adopt you.
You know, like it's terrific parents who care, and that as a non-parent, that makes me super happy, because you all are raising the next leaders and people who will shape
our daughter, Tananarive's stepdaughter, is working in the human resources department down at UC San Diego. and is just a joy. And Jason, our son Jason, I love him so much. When the first time I held him, I literally did the Roots thing and took him out in the yard and held him up to the sky and said, "Behold, the only thing greater than yourself." And I swore to God that day that I was going to deliver him safely to his adulthood. That is my job as a parent, just to make sure he gets to the point where he can take care of himself. And that's it. And I love the sharing part of the community. There are so many people who have helped us with him. So many people who gave us feedback and help and support. And the only way you can help them is to share it. So, it's like, thank you. You are a beautiful daughter of the Spirit. And, whatever we can do to make sure that you blossom in the way that, if you could see yourself through our eyes, you'd be pretty happy.
Well, let me jump in and say, when I got to do the horror noir, maybe you didn't want to talk about that right now, but I can't help but
no, let it flow, let it go.
The horror noir episode that I did, I was lucky enough to be in the documentary Horror Noir, which these kids produced, and along with Ashley. And I was delighted to be in that, right? Because it was sort of an erudite yet funny, fun take on horror movies. So if you haven't seen it, audience, you gotta go watch it. But when it came to the scripted show, as soon as I saw the script, I went, oh, it opens with a sexy, fun scene with this couple in the bathtub. And right, we're not 20, we're adults. And I thought, this is beautiful. This is what the world needs more of, to see adults sexualized, because there's a trope in Hollywood where you hit a certain age as a Black actress and you are a desexualized civil servant.
Right. Yes.
And
I'm sure they'd be happy if you gained 50 pounds too.
Yeah. Well, it's a weird thing, because your job, getting to say your words, your delicious words, and the thought-provoking subject of the episode was amazing. But also, you saved me, because Hollywood is very weird with women and age, and they've been auditioning me for like grandma roles, which I could be. But here's the thing: I'm not the Black grandma you're looking for. Have we?
Yeah, you better be a sexy grandma, lady.
It's just.
A hot grandma, I could see.
I could be a fun, hip grandma. If you're looking for her, but if you're looking for Black grandma on the couch, don't peg me into that yet. So here was a part that was adults just being adults and having their life. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for that.
Well, we really appreciate it. You were in our minds as we were working on it, really. So,
which, by the way, is like literally one of the biggest compliments an actor could have. So thank you.
Well, let me give you another compliment. that I did a lot of work in Hollywood back in the 90s, and then I had a long period of time where I wasn't doing any for various family reasons. And then coming back in, I had a chance to work on The Twilight Zone with Jordan Peele. But this piece that we did for Shudder was I'm thinking about it, I think it was the first time we ever had a chance to do a love scene. I ever had a chance to do a love scene. So I'm envisioning what you want is to leave room in the script for the actors. That Robert McKee, the great story structure guy, told me that actors don't act the text, they act the subtext. So you have to leave room and assume that the artists, the director, the actors are artists just like you. Let them bring themselves to it. So the prayer is that if I leave room in these words, that our actors are going to bring something to it. And in this particular case, it had to be a combination of intelligence, sexuality, and love, so that we would be afraid for these people when
things go badly.
The fertilizer hits the mix master.
That's the other thing.
You brought it.
They were intelligent, smart people. There was no one on set going, you know what, Rachel, sass it up. Damn it, like seriously. So
you actually hear that stuff?
No one's gonna call me not Black enough. And that was kind of important, and I'm sure that's something you two have encountered.
Oh my God, of course.
As you're educated Negroes.
Yes. I mean, seriously, there are what made a difference for me being a pot-bellied, four-eyed nerd when I was in high school, who was just definitely not black enough, getting a black belt from the Black Karate Federation, and my teacher was Louis Farrakhan's bodyguard. That's my bona fides. It's like, okay, bring it. You want to say I'm not black enough? Let me tell you. But it hurts because you want tribe, you want to belong somewhere. And if white people say you're not black enough, I have white people tell them, oh, Steve, you're not one of them. You're one of us. What the hell? What the hell? And have
compliment people thought it was in the 80s.
Yes, they thought that was a compliment.
Not a compliment. Hey, Rachel, I want. Oh, go on.
I just wanted to say I wouldn't have been able to do such a fun job in horror noir if it wasn't for the great casting of Malcolm Barrett, right?
Yes.
So good.
A terrific actor. He's so good, and he's a generous actor on set, because at a certain point I went, oh gosh, this is like a 2-person play for the most part.
Yes.
For a lot of it was just the two of us. But
it really was.
Todd and the other characters. And so again, getting to act with a caring male lead who was also a weirdo.
It's really fun.
That's so wonderful to hear. And that's the answer to a writer's dream, is to turn their words over to someone they can trust. And as soon as I heard that you were doing it, I thought, yeah, that could work. That could work.
Between you and me at the wall, I'm sharing this for other performers out there. So I had been involved in the documentary, and then there were a few episodes, and I had been asked to read for a much, much smaller old lady part in a different horror noir episode. And the woman
really
was in her 60s, right? For that role. And my intuition, now I wouldn't have done this when I was younger, but I'm a grown up now and I have other things going on. My intuition said, no, I'm not going to pass on this smaller role.
Good for you. Good for you. Because
he's going to be that bold, right? But I went, I don't think this is my role. And then all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, I get a straight offer on a much better part, and I thought, I'm so glad I listened to my
listen, while we have you here, one question I would like to ask of you is, what advice would you give writers in terms of writing something that an actor will want to perform?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Listen, I feel woefully inadequate to say something to writers, even though I've written a book, because that's, my struggle. But I think people just want an interesting character, and it doesn't matter if it's a good character or an evil character, right? We just want something human to hook into that other people watching will relate to, even if they're unaware that's part of their shadow side, right? Or their lower vibration, or their higher vibration. So once again, you created well-rounded 3D characters. They were already there on the page. There was very little that I had to do with horror noir, to be honest. But in general, we're just looking for things that aren't de rigueur or stereotypical, because at this point, I've already said half the lines that I see in a script. I've said them over and over and over in different jobs.
Yeah.
And it's not as much of a turn on at this point. Like when I was 25, I'd be like, I don't care, I'll say the same thing over and over again. But as a grown-up, I need to be turned on, because I could just go do something else, frankly, than keep repeating the same thing. But I want to ask you guys this, because I need a little advice, right? I've written a book and I'm working on my next one. And I still, to this day, have trouble thinking of myself as a writer. In fact, when I'm not writing, they say writers have the cleanest kitchens because we avoid writing, right? So I will do anything but write. And then once I do actually, because I feel like a little bit of a fraud. That's the truth with writing. But once I sit down in front of the computer and actually start writing, I really enjoy it. And I know I'm okay at it, and da-da-da-da-da. But when I'm not writing, I'm like, well, you're an actor and you're not. And so I grapple with the same thing lots of humans do out there.
Well, you're talking about the voices. Yeah. And I'm sure you recognize the sound of the voices from your maybe earlier days as an actor, when you're about to go into an audition and that voice is telling you you're not really an actor, right?
Yeah. You know what? That's such a good point, because up until yesterday, I probably felt that way about acting as well. That's the truth.
And all of this, the ways we take care of ourselves, the ways that we talk ourselves into our magnificence is a part of what this podcast is all about. And as we're talking about that horror noir segment, which is called Fugue State, by the way, if people haven't heard the name of the episode, it actually has the great Tony Todd in it as a charismatic pastor. I don't know if you want to talk about this, but I remember when we were DMing on Twitter back with all the excitement of the shoot, it was coming right out of the pandemic. Okay. Yeah. And you talked about not just the fact that it's an opportunity to shine and have this great role, but just to be with people, you know?
Yes. As much as I'm it's been interesting with the pandemic because I'm actually a very extroverted introvert. And so I can be like, and big and actory, but I need my alone time. I can literally sit and stare at a wall to decompress. So the pandemic was very hard on me. Don't get me wrong. And plenty of work went away and but I probably didn't suffer as much as some people because I enjoy my own company.
Right.
And always have. And so I would look at that part of the pandemic for people who really hated it too. It was a chance to get to know yourself because you can't escape your high vibe voice and the low vibe voice that says, you can't do it, you suck, right? And then the other high vibe voice, because I know some people don't have an internal dialogue, but most of us do. And the truth is, I spend most of my day, and this is why I wrote the tarot book, because it was helpful for me in my process of remaining grounded and human, but I spend a good deal of my day negotiating with myself, right? I hear the voice come in, the negative one, and I'm pretty trained at this point to catch it and go, oh, there's that negative voice. It's not even the truth. And I literally lob it away like a softball and replace it with something that is more neutral or more positive. As a thought pattern, because as I said too, I used to suffer from tremendous anxiety. I can still be very anxious, uptight person and all that. But I was talking to a friend who really leans into their anxiety. And I said, listen, neither one is real. The I suck, I'm terrible, I'm the worst person who ever lived. That's not real. Neither is I'm the greatest person in the world. But,
right.
But I said to them, why not lean into the one that works more for you? Neither one is real. So leaning into, I'm all right, as like, I'm never going to say you're the greatest person in the world, but I may go, you're doing all right and you're trying your best. And I kind of silence some of the voices with that. And then also working with my tarot practice. And I kind of love that I'm sitting here with two brown people who aren't like, hey, devil woman who made a tarot deck.
No,
not at all. Not at all.
Carl Jung used tarot cards with his patients. They are simply paper cards, cardboard, with images that hit us on a visceral level. Because I talk about this in my book, Steve, but the two books I pulled down from my parents' library, and by library, I mean bookcase, when I was a child. I've been in foster care and then went to live with my dad and my new stepmom. And in the bookcase was Carl Jung's Man and His Symbols with that 70s cover that they had, and Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil. So I was taught to read it around 4, so I could read a little bit, right? But obviously I'm not reading these books. I'm probably more looking at the pictures, picking up the little things here and there. And I went, yeah, okay, this is interesting me. And then cut to a few years later, a friend of my parents came over with a tarot deck. And I went, wait a second, these are the same images that were in Man and His Symbols, a lot of these. And I kind of put it together that it was a language I could parse if I learned it. And the thing I want to say to any brown, black people who are like, oh, it's evil. I'm like, listen, there are so many biblical references in a tarot deck. It is not out of alignment with Christ consciousness. To me, it's simply a way to hear your higher self clear in a more clear way, and then hear God's message clearer. Because I don't know about you all, but I make some bad choices in my life. And I have to reflect on those choices and say, why did I do that? And so using tarot when there's not a therapist or someone around is terrific. And lastly, because I know I'm monologuing here, but tarot is so good for working through your stuff so that you're not calling up your friends and vomiting your stuff on them and expecting them to live in the minutia of your brain. Nobody wants to live in the minutia of your brain any more than they want to hear your dream from last night. Trust me.
So I'm not going to veer too far away from the book because I am very excited to hear more about it. But I did read in an interview, and I find it very interesting that you came with this interest before the craft, right? Because that's a lot of people know you from there, and it's like, oh, well, that was right down
No, and I get that people would assume that I was interested, that it came after the craft, or I was trying to just make a cash grab, frankly, based on some old movie. But the truth is, it did start that young, and it's also a true story that the year before I got the craft script. So this is true. 9 months before that script landed in my lap, my TV broke. Now I only had like 2 channels, right? And I was like, oh, I'm going to fix it because I love TV. I'm American. And then this little voice, my intuition, came in and said, don't fix it. You're supposed to be doing something else, you procrastinator. And I went, all right. So I really delved into my tarot studies at that time. I had a bunch of decks, but I kept copious notes on readings and patterns, and I just really took it seriously. And then that script landed in my lap. So if that's not prep work for that film without knowing it, right? That's what that was. So by the time that script landed and they weren't reading anyone Black, I said, if anyone's going to be a witch in this town, it's me.
Well, that's beautiful. And I love that intuition that made you pass on the earlier horror noir script before you got the one that was right for you, and the intuition that took you to the craft. And like
by any chance, do you have a tarot deck sitting right there with you?
Of course I do, but I do want to jump in and say, listen, young actors, young performers, you don't actually want to pass on everything. You do want to dig into your intuition on that, because quite often I'm an intuitive person. I can know when I'm reading for something that maybe it's not my job, but I'm still going to read for it most of the time, because those producers and those people and those directors are going to be doing other things. So if I can do a good job in this audition and I don't get the part, I never know where it's going to lead down the line. Now, I, as a grown-up lady, took that luxury just because I had a feeling, and I've been involved in the documentary, and I thought, I could do better.
You can, and you will, and you have. So yes, absolutely.
But yes, Steve, of course I have a tarot deck.
Yeah, I just thought maybe if you could show a couple of cards just for people who are not familiar with tarot decks, so they'd know exactly what you were talking about.
Very good.
So a tarot deck is 78 cards, 22, there's 78 cards in total. 22 of them, 0 through 21, are major arcana cards. As you know, if you've worked with any theory of myth, this is the hero's journey in a nutshell. The major arcana starts with the Fool, 0, and ends with the World. It is literally the story of the major arcana, and the archetypes are human archetypes. And a lot of people, if you Google tarot movie and breakdown, there is someone who did an exquisite breakdown of Pee Wee Herman's Big Adventure and tarot cards and the hero's journey. You can do it with almost any script, because I always find it interesting in a tarot deck. We have the devil, which might be, it means so much more than the Christian connotations, but it ain't great, right? But then a couple cards after that comes the Tower, which is the dark night of the soul. You almost got the heads up with the devil. So here's one of my cards. This is the 8 of Wands, which is a card of intuition, coming in and coming out, and messages and things coming. I'm going to see if I can find a minute.
So it's a head, and what's visualized there for people who are just listening? It's the head and...
All right, if you're just listening, this is a head with the brain broken up into segments. There's some kind of colorful things kind of behind the character. And then there are these rods, because this is the 8 of Wands, which the wands are represented by wands. There are 4 suits in tarot, which correlate to earth, air, fire, water. And wands, it would be fire, would represent fire. So even though there's no fire on this card, this is about fiery, your thoughts manifesting into reality, information coming in quickly, you sending out information, kind of the way you can think about someone and then they'll call you out of the blue, right? That kind of energy like that coming in and out. Let me find one more. I want to find a major arcana. Here's my Sun card. Now these follow the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith system of tarot, right?
The sun has an eyeball.
Yeah, this one has a big sun, and if you can see, which you kind of can't see, but the rays of the sun are little hands, and I got that from an Egyptian motif. Underneath there's some pyramids as a nod to the Egyptian motif, and then just a really fertile plants and growth and life and lusciousness, which the sun all brings. But part of this card, right, which is a happy looking card, the sun, it's a major arcana. It says we're heralding like the day your pilot sells. That's a Sunday, right? You're happy, but also every card has a high and low vibe. So the high vibe of the sun card is things are great, things are growing, things are terrific, you feel fantastic. And the other side is because there's a low vibe, which is the sun encourages us to shine light on our own behavior. Because the one thing that people don't understand about getting a tarot reading is they want someone to solve all their problems or just tell them it's great. What people don't get is all it's going to do is give you a roadmap for the work you do on yourself.
Ah, ha, ha, ha.
Like therapy, basically.
I love it.
But it is, I literally call it a shrink in a box on the bottom of my thing. And I wanted to write the book, like I said, because first of all, as an actress of a certain age, things had kind of slowed down. And I was like, well, I'm a creative person. I gave myself the permission to do something else. And this sounds silly to kids today because you guys are like, we can do everything, which you can. And that's amazing. But my generation was like, you must get in the system before you can circumvent the system. You can't reinvent the system. So I just thought, I'm an actor. That's all I am. I'm an actor. I'm an actor. And I do pat myself on the back for doing it without nepotism, by the way, back in the day. Because when I think back to the fact that I was just a kid who arrived here with no connections whatsoever, the fact that I worked is pretty cool. But once it slowed down, I was like, okay, what do I do? I'm still an actor and I love acting and I still love acting. But I thought I was frustrated, mad, and sad. Steve, I'm sure you might have gone through different things with your own career, right? In acting, it's all crazy. But once I got over my ego at the time, this is the way things were supposed to be. And I thought I was going to roll into another TV show. More in my ego. And then I was also dealing with a major health thing and my brother died. And then his father killed himself. It was a lot going on at the time. So I just, went insular, which is what I tend to do. And I realized, okay, well, I still need to work and I still need to make a living. And I've always loved writing. So it was kind of a natural fit to take a passion of mine, something that has helped me during the difficult times.
So what's your specific, what is it that you brought to this that you'd never seen in any other book on tarot?
That's such a good question, because for everybody listening, when you're writing a book or a script or something, even if the themes are standard, you want to bring something a little different to the mix, don't you? What's the point? There's a million tarot books and decks. But I did have something different to bring, which was the way that I read. Most people, when they read tarot, right, they read cards upright, or that they can come out reversed in a deck, which simply means upside down, and that has a different meaning. And I thought, I've never read that way. I've always just laid the cards out upright and used my intuition to determine whether that card was in low vibe, which is what I call it, or high vibe. I don't really do reversals. So the difference would be that, and in saying each card has a high and a low vibe. And we're going to look at it this way, because even the worst, even the terriblest cards, like let's take the devil, right? That is a card in its worst sense of all the things being chained, addictions, bad behaviors, But in the best sense, because there is a high vibe. It's a bacchanalian good time, right? We can all have a little devilish good time without it destroying us. So and it's a delicate balance. So I thought my take on having high and low vibe, not dealing with reversals, was just a more, it was just my way of looking at things, but other people I talked to over the years had related to it. So again, I like that question, because I wouldn't have written a tarot book if I didn't have something else to add. I also included in the book 22 to go along with the major arcana cards, 22 memoir essays. The hardest thing of publishing a book is seeing how they were truncated and hacked and edited, but that's a part of first-time book authors, journey to go through is seeing.
Yes, there's a whole lot to it.
I'm also grateful. Like, I would encourage first-time authors, whether it is fiction or nonfiction, as I did, to have an outside eye look at it. I had someone edit it with me, because if y'all keeps asking me to read your first drafts,
no. I tell my students, don't you dare turn your first draft into me. I don't want to see your first draft. I want to see your third draft.
But I agree. And you're reading like the fourth draft of my book, right? But I do find, because I have a lot of millennials and younger people who totally dig me, and I'm not sure why. I'm like, is it the hair? I don't know. But I'm trying to encourage and foster in them this sense of, yes, you did it. You did it. Now you don't get a trophy for that. You go back to the computer and you rewrite. And that's how it goes. And I don't know if it's a generational thing or what, but they seem frustrated that it's almost like they equate, well, I did this thing, I should be famous now.
Oh my gosh, yes, I hear that complaint a lot from people in the industry with younger actors, especially. Am I famous yet? Am I famous yet? Am I famous yet? It's like, okay, maybe you need to do this out of love for the craft, and
Yeah.
maybe the fame thing will come next. But I had a question, thinking about.
You'll know when you're famous.
Yeah, you'll know, and you might not like it, as a matter of fact. But in terms of writing and even embracing that part of yourself that is a writer, what kinds of writing have you done in your earlier life? Were you a journaler? Did you keep a diary?
I did. I kept journals. I kept copious diaries that I still have, most of them. I have my first journal. I also was a journalism major for about a year in college until I went to, it was like, I don't want to do this. I want to be an actor. But I took writing very seriously. It was something that I've always felt like was a way to express myself. And because of the book now, I'm getting the courage to veer into scripts and things like.
Oh, you're writing screenplays now?
Seems like a natural progression to just sort of dip out into, all the different areas that interest me. And having played many a character, I'm like, I think I know what a character wants. What I'm learning, though, is even after all the years and things I've done, I'm learning structure and things like that. Because
Yeah, I was just thinking that you have characters and structure in the sense of, if there are two things to write about, who am I and what is true.
yes,
Your characters are your view of humanity, but structure is your view of reality, because structure is the way the world reacts to that character's efforts to gain their goal.
well, then maybe that's why I have trouble with structure, Steve, because I just feel like I live in, I always refer to myself as like a changeling time traveler, because I feel like time works differently for me, and the way my brain works, like I can look up and months have passed, but it seems like a second to me. So like I'm lost in fairyland. That's the truth, but I accept that about myself. But with the writing, I just want to say too, when I first started the book, I sold the book, and then I was like, a nonfiction book, you don't have to have the whole book. You write a proposal. So I think I submitted a 60 to 80 page proposal, sold it, and then was like, oh my God, I have to write a book. I'm so freaked out. Right.
Yeah, that's
So
pretty normal.
Yeah. So I didn't touch it for like a month, I was like, oh, I'll get to that later. And then once I started, I'd read that real writers write in the morning from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. I'm a night owl. I hate the morning. So I, faffed around. I'm also not great with discipline. I know that's shocking to some of you out there. Anyway, I realized my best, I wrote that book between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. in the morning. And that was my jam. I love to write, and I love the night, because maybe I've dug into this in a psychological way, and I'm like, maybe it's because I know no one will bother me.
It's quiet.
There are plenty of writers who do that.
Yes.
The only thing that's consistent about writers is that they write. There is no time. There's no particular way. Some people plot in advance. Others just write it. Some people do it in the morning. Some people do it in the afternoon. Some people do it at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's, you finished a book. That makes you a writer and an author. Period.
I love what you said earlier in your taglines for this podcast, which is, even if it's just one sentence a day.
That's what we teach our students. If you can make a commitment, as a matter of fact, our Lifewriting premium program that we will plug shamelessly at the end of this is based on, if you're willing to write one sentence a day, and you're willing to listen to one audio a week, we can guarantee you that by the end of a year, you're going to be a writer. And so, but the first thing is, it doesn't have to be discipline. Discipline is often running away from pain, but it can also be moving towards something you love. You don't have to discipline. I don't have to discipline myself to eat sushi. You know what I'm saying? But I eat it every week. So it's regular, So you can find something that you love and move toward it, something you're afraid of and move away from it, or both at the same time. Put your fear behind you, your love in front of you, and run like hell. So it just doesn't matter. Just what matters is, did you do the work? Did you get it done? Did you tell the truth?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I agree 100%. And hopefully that's something that you can take with you into your next project, because you feel like you don't have discipline and your voices are trying to roadblock you, I'll call it, and tell you that you are not a writer. If you're writing a sentence a day, it's a minimal investment. There's no way you can tell yourself you don't have time to write a sentence, but it's kind of a Jedi mind trick that you're playing on yourself, because obviously you're not just going to write one sentence.
But that's how I got back. Anytime I would get stuck with the book and get writer's block or whatever, I would go back to, okay, just one sentence then.
There you go. And here's the whole thing.
She intuited it.
If a writer writes, and if one sentence a day puts you in the category of writer, and you logically can believe that, then when the voice says you're not a writer, you know that that voice is lying to you. And one of the core secrets, one of the core secrets in meditation, one of the deep secrets, is to come to the realization that the voices in your head are not you. You are not the voices in your head. You are the one listening to the voices.
Right. You are not because a lot of us have that anxiety voice and we think
yes.
the truth of us. And I hear you, Steve. That is a voice.
That's a voice. And you might ask yourself, whose voice is that? And you might realize it's the voice of a parent, an ex-lover, a teacher, someone who said something positive that lifts you up, or something negative trying to tear you down. And I would think that one person who does tarot is talking about a way that they become ways to reify, to make more solid the symbols that you use to represent your relationships, your reality. And so you're taking the symbols out of your head and your heart and you're putting them on the table so you can see what your reaction to these things is depending on the meaning you gave to them.
That's such a good point, because a lot of people too with tarot cards, right? I call them interpretations in my book, because there are many interpretations.
Amen.
Of a card, of a thing, of a perception of something. Yeah. So it's my interpretation. For people listening, if you haven't listened to the podcast these guys did with Brian Fuller, please do. First
it was so good.
Amen.
Introduce me to him, and he is just a phenomenal human. I just love that cat. And he's dropped some real gems on writing. And I also, I'm drawn to him because this is a very successful showrunner kind of guy, but he's still human and he's still kind and he's still thoughtful in the way that he talked on the podcast about speaking with fellow writers and how you want to encourage people rather than go, no, that's a shitty idea. He talks extensively about that. And he
is a man, he's one of those people. To me, creativity is staying in touch with that child self, the kid that you were when you first looked out at the world and asked, who am I? If you can bring that into your adult self and combine that with adult skills, you have an artist who can succeed at writing or acting, working in Hollywood. So Brian's little boy is very much alive, and we have the incredible honor of just playing games with his little boy.
Yeah,
and it's such when you meet people like that and they invite you to play with them, they're inviting you into their heart.
Yeah. And they're rare. There's not, listen, Hollywood is where I've been for a long time. And I love being a performer and I love being in this business. Every fiber of me is an artist. That's the truth. And I finally say that now I'm an artist. But Hollywood is also rampant with smoke and mirrors and narcissism and a million pitfalls. Devil card, tarot card energy that we can get trapped in, our ego and our hubris and all those things. So when we encounter someone like you two or Brian, we're like, no, I'm not letting go of those people, because they're the real deal, because they give me hope that you can continue in this business and still remain connected to our fellow human beings. None of us are better than because you've got successful books or I've been on a TV show. That doesn't make me better than.
We're all on the same path.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just
that's what it makes me, a goofy ham. And I'm lucky that I have an outlet to express those sides of myself. In fact, this last week at work, the director was really nice. And when I was like, thanks for everything, he was like, you're a very unusual girl in the things you say and do. And I said, because I'm a grown up, I said, I know I'm weird. And he said, I wouldn't have used those words. And I said, no, it's fine. I love my weird. My weird's funny. My weird works for me. If I don't love my weird, who will?
Embrace your weird. But this is a great transition, because last week, Steve and I did a podcast about our Hollywood horror stories. And you might just want to give it a little thought before you say anything, but
we can bleep anything that if you accidentally say, you don't want to say a specific name.
We'll take it out.
But we would love to hear. People believe that if you're successful, you haven't had challenges, and that is just the opposite of what the truth is. So would you please share with us some of the ugliness.
And not just in a gossipy way, but also, although that's fine, but also how did you overcome it?
Like, listen, I still want to work as an actor.
I know.
Exactly.
That's what I say all the time. I'm still trying to work in this town. So
I know. So it's kind of tricky. What I will say is, for me, there was just sort of a pervasive feeling, because again, the 90s, we were coming out of the 80s, right, which Black people made a lot of strides in entertainment and things like that, not necessarily power positions in terms of politics and things, but it was also Reaganism and terrible, right? So I was really excited for the 90s. I was like, I am Gen X grunge. But there was still this pervasive thing, like I mentioned earlier, I heard constantly sassier, which is code for Blacker, right? My thing was like, why you testing me then for this role? Like, you know what I bring to the table, and it's not that. And listen, an actor should be able to do every kind of role, but the truth is, for me in the early 90s, I looked at it and I went, our movies are so separate. It's either Boys in the Hood or there's a white teen movie that I can't be in, like a John Hughes thing I'll never get read for. Lisa Bonet had a really interesting article back in the day, way back in the day, an interview about the shade she got just trying to get in for a John Hughes movie. So for me at the time in the 90s, I went, there's so many girls who truly are that character from straight out of Brooklyn, and I'm not. So I'm gonna lean into, I wanted to show people that you could speak in a certain patois, right? Or you could have curly hair and still be Black, like the tweet I put up, just because someone don't Black like you don't mean they're not Black. So all of those things went into my decisions. But so rather than one specific horror story, what I will say is the thing that has been a drag for me in terms of Toto's career was no matter what I did, I would always go back and my agents or the team would be like, well, that was just shit. So that was just a shit project. So you're a little stupid sitcom, or you're a little stupid this, or everything I did was like stupid in their eyes, right? So I just kind of thought, I felt belittled and made small by those comments. And my old agent used to, I don't know, I have a manager now. I don't even have an agent, but because no one wants to take a risk on a middle-aged actress. But my old agent always used this phrase, they have stronger choices. And I remember saying to him one day, please stop that, because that is implying I'm weak. And I understand I'm not in the test group, or I'm not in the elite 5 who are going forward, but that doesn't mean I sucked. I didn't do a good job. It just meant I'm not one of their choices for this, for a million reasons. That could be the look in my eye, my eyebrow. It's so subjective. So he continued with that. But I would say there was that, and I realized the people who are in the serious A-level thing, there's such a small infinitesimal group, right? There's 7 of them. I'm going to spend my entire career beating myself up because I'm good at comedy and have fun doing it. No, I think there was merit to each and every job, whether it's silly or not. So I didn't like that. I didn't like being considered, not Black enough when I was around my Black peers. Hollywood actors, there's a lot of ego involved in that. And I never really liked that side of the game, the way we shade each other and the way we're always cloying for position. And my thing is like, if there's that lead, follow, get out of the way. I can be a leader for sure, but most of the time I'm gonna fuck off over there and let you all battle it out by yourselves because I don't care. So it's always been a little bit of a struggle for me in Hollywood playing that game. I don't love going to premieres. I do love clothes and girly things, but I don't always like having to do it on cue. And so it's a whole game, and I'm glad that, I have the outlet of writing a book, but also the luxury of still getting on a TV show last week like I did. It makes it a little less stressful for me because I was talking with a young girl on the show I did last week, and I said, I guess I wish I'd enjoyed myself more when I was your age and on a sitcom or whatever. I just wish I'd leaned into the fun of it all a little bit more. This is silly. We literally get to be silly for a living. This is super fun. And then the other thing, just to say, being an intuitive person, my next book is about empaths, right? Because quite often as an empath or an intuitive person, I will pick up on like the one thing and I'll innocently say it, not even knowing I'm picking up on the one thing that person doesn't want to say or think of. So, all of that was very daunting. Even like I'm writing about this now, but even last week I said to someone, oh gosh, I love this show. It's so fun. We get to be so silly and be fun. And then literally an hour later, the person came over and said, this one says we're silly and we're just silly. And a million thoughts went through in a millisecond, right? Because I was like, oh God, I was complimenting them like the sacred fool of acting. But I'm an empath enough to know that, okay, I triggered this person actually, and it wasn't on purpose, but they are triggered and they're having some feelings right now. So instead of leaning into my old Scorpio Rachel, where I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I just said, oh, I'm sorry, silly, a bad word. I meant fun, like the way we get to be fun here, because that's my truth. But I also am bringing stuff like that up because those kind of power plays and things happen all day long on a set. All day long, you are stepping in landmines. And frankly, I think there's a lot of passive aggressiveness on acting sets, right? Because you can't say something directly. So everyone gets passive aggressive. And then if you're in that box, meaning you're in that set and you're in that for a while, that starts to play out in your real life. You start to do those same things in your real life, being more passive aggressive. So my thing is just being aware that I have an ego and I can be triggered. I didn't mean to trigger that person, but that's life, and how we can maneuver through all these little landmines without then taking it on and going home and going, you're an asshole. You're shameful, Rachel, for inadvertently making someone uncomfortable. I like to forgive myself for my trespasses.
I can so relate to that. Oh my gosh, because one thing I have learned in the pandemic or remembered when I venture outside is that I'm a little bit socially awkward. Okay. I discussed that last week. I
was before. I'm a very socially awkward person to begin with. Were you before? You seem pretty confident.
No, I'm telling you, I will say, listen to the podcast we're about to put on Sunday. I will say something outrageous for like not thinking first or really self-conscious. Or I remember even with Brian, like one of the first times we saw him after the vaccinations, I wanted to take a selfie and I was asking him to take off his mask. And later on, I was just like, why were you pressuring him to take off his mask? That is not cool. People will take off their mask if they're comfortable.
Call that voice, by the way, the one that's like, what do you call that voice, by the way, the one that says you did wrong today?
It just sounds like me. That's the problem.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you, because you're a hit in the documentary Horror Noire, A History of Black Horror, because of, your talk about being the sassy best friend. Are you okay? You're one of the few memes out of Horror Noire.
I am a meme from that, actually.
You're a meme. So in what ways do you think that Hollywood has changed for the better? Like if you were the same age coming to Hollywood now,
oh, wow.
How might it be different?
Oh gosh, I think it would be really different. There's so many more opportunities now. Now, of course, we still have a very long way to go. I'm not here sitting saying we've solved everything because we got a black showrunner here or there, not at all. But things have changed. Like, for example, when I was doing The Craft, I wasn't included on the publicity junket. That would just never happen today. They would never invite the Black character because, of course, I felt shame when I wasn't invited on the junket. I thought I must be terrible in this movie. I didn't understand that they were like, this movie ain't going to play in Black neighborhoods. So we're not going to bother because it's all dollars and cents, right? It all comes down to that. So things like that. And then, not having my white peers in the movie understand. They were like, well, we're just more famous, speaking of ego, which, they were, but at the same time, they couldn't take in like, I'm on the poster.
or you're in the movie more, come on.
And I'm in the movie. Or, when I mouthed off a couple of years ago about not being included in the signing conventions, the horror conventions. Now, I don't have to be invited everywhere, that's for sure. But even at that time, and it's 20 years later, I was surprised that a couple of the other girls in the movie were like, oh no, Rachel, it's not a craft reunion. I'm there for this and she's there for that and we're there for that. And I was like, I know. Stupid, but we've not all been together in 20 something years. This would be the first reunion, and the fact that this convention is like, we don't need it. That's why I decided to put my foot down, because I thought you may not need it or not, but we all did 3 times as much.
I think that one of the things that has to come out there is that we know that racism factors into some of these instances. However, in any instance that you point at, people have a perfectly good explanation for why it's not racism. But yet and still, it's there. So it leads you to that question. If people are going to deny that it's racism every single time, but we know that racism is there, then how do you deal with this? How am I supposed to think about this? No one will ever cop to it.
Well, don't you think?
But we know it's there.
I tell my white friends, like, you got to talk to your friends. I can't. Nothing I say as a brown person is going to land. So it's up to you at the dinner parties and you to do that with your white relatives and other friends. That's the truth on that one. But it is always mind blowing to me that something super clearly racist can happen and people go, why? Like, people kept saying, well, why? I don't understand. Why wouldn't they want you at the convention? And I said, I don't know. Why do you think?
Oh my God.
So I guess my way of dealing with it, Steve, is to be an asshole.
Well, I think you deal with it by laughing, because if you don't laugh, you're going to cry.
No, exactly. And I do think a sense of humor is super important. I mean, I think the first time I'd been together with all the craft girls, like maybe 7 years ago, Robin Tunney leaned over and said, oh, when Nev says you're not working right now, why don't you just get an assistant role? We have one on our show. And she met Anjanou Ellis, and, an award-winning actress whose name she didn't even say, who has a Tony, and da-da-da-da-da. And she's like, we have one on our show. So casual racism. I'm not saying the girl meant it that way, but she's from Chicago and Irish. I don't know her. So my thing is, I do this thing with people like that a shrink taught me a long time ago, which is to say nothing when someone says something really stupid.
When you bring it home and you're feeling stressed, on the times when you are feeling stressed, what do you do to rebalance yourself, to get your center? What techniques can you offer our listeners to help them when they're feeling stressed and they want to,
well, I'm
a bitch? I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's sometimes you just want to strangle somebody.
I'm American, so beyond watching television, Steve, I think is what you're asking here, and
yes.
I'll distract myself. But what I do is, first of all, I think of tarot as self-care, right? That's therapy, basically. It's therapy you can do on yourself. And it's really inexpensive. My book set is under $30, or you can get anyone's. I want you to do anything but give YouTube tarot readers all your money.
Did you design those tarot cards?
Huh?
Is that your design on the tarot cards?
Excellent.
You should have said that specifically. That's wonderful.
I designed the tarot cards, but I worked with an artist who drew them. So other things I do, breathing techniques.
Can you give us one?
Well, I think even if you're in your car, I can get triggered real easily. I'm a Scorpio, right? So number one thing to do is long breath in through the nose, out through the mouth is one of the most grounding things you can do. The other thing I will do, I don't know if I can admit this because it's kind of embarrassing, but it's true. Like if you're really in an anxiety spin, now granted, if that's a serious condition, this may not help, but for most of us who aren't always in one, but we've hit one, I will ground myself. You have to switch the narrative in your head. So the narrative is, oh my God, you're such an idiot, you Akbar. I will put my hand on the thing. This is the kitchen counter. I am standing in the kitchen. My hand is on the kitchen counter. I am literally bringing myself back down to out of the stratosphere, centering myself in my body. And then I am doing the breathing techniques that I am talking about. I am also big on replacing the thought. Again, if the thought is, I said the stupidest thing in the world, I release that thought, I send that away. I go, that's the lower self speaking. That's the devil, if you are a Christian, right? Devil's dragging us down. I release that thought and I say, I am trying to do my best. I am doing my best. So I don't replace it with a thought that's bullshit, like, oh, I'm great, because I'm not feeling great in that moment, but I'm doing my best. That resonates as truthful, even if it's not up to your standards.
Where can people connect with you and find your book and, find out more about the wonderful Rachel True?
I'm mostly on, I'm trying to join the TikTok, but Jesus, I'm old. I want to dance.
Hey, when you figure it out, let me know. Okay. That's all I can say.
I'm on Instagram. I'm pretty active on there. I'm active in my stories. And then I'm on Twitter as well. But mostly I'm being quiet these days off social. I'm not really on there as much, trying to focus on my book. And then I'm saving up for a camera package, you guys, because I want to make my own film. But I very much want my own equipment. It's just something important to me to have so I can shoot it, do a scene at 2 a.m. in the morning if I so feel inspired. Because the idea of directing something I have written. I'm stepping who I've always wanted to be, I would say. And I'm encouraging people to do it younger than my mid-age. You know, it took me this many years to be like, wait a second, Rachel, you can do this. This is the way I talk to myself, by the way, Steve. And the other things, just to lastly round out, how do I calm myself down? Different ways, different practices. I want to write about taking a transcendental meditation course for the next book.
Right.
I will try many ways because I understand that I am in control of my thoughts. They are not in control of me. And it is only the time where I let that lower self take over that I go, yeah, you are a shit. You are a shitty actor and you're a shitty this and you're stupid and you shouldn't even try. Like those thoughts come in even my mind. Some of you were listening going, really though? Yes, really though, because I'm a human being having a very human experience.
Beautiful.
So much. You've said so much, just so much gold. Thank you so much for that, Rachel. And
though, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I believe in you. You will be that director. The fact you've just put it out in the universe, and then you're making taking the steps you need along the way to make it happen. That's literally the roadmap to making your dreams come true. So yes, as an actor, you should. All actors. I'm talking to all of you. Don't wait for the right script. Learn to write and write the right script. And you might not be able to get it made, but you might make it yourself.
Well, lastly, and I know we're a little over time, but I want to round this out with when I was in 8th grade and we moved to a new all-white school in upstate New York. Thanks, white dad. I joined the theater company because they'd only done musicals. And I said, hey, let's do The Miracle Worker. My stepmother had just done the play, an arena stage. And anyway, long story short, we started it and they were like, you're going to be the servant girl. And I was like, I'm a blind girl. That's what I am. I'm not Helen Keller or where I get that, but I'm one of the blind girls because I'd seen the play and wanted to, anyway. And they said, no, you're the maid. And I said, no, I'm blind girl. And they said, no, you're the maid. And I quit and I went home to my stepmother and I said, I get it. I'm going to have to write my own roles, I guess, if I want to play the characters I want to play. And I add that in to say that, like, I'm hoping things are different for the younger generation, but the truth is racism and being defined by my Blackness really did have an impact on the way I think and my career. And by the way, I love it. Look at my karma. I love my color. I love my hair. There are a lot of things about being Black in America I love, right? But I don't like how, and again, having a white dad, I have an interesting perspective on this, but I do not like the way we are treated. And I love that the new generations are breaking past some of that. And they are able to create their own systems now outside of the norm. And that excites me. And that's something I hope will stay with me and keep me young, because I don't want to turn into get off my lawn. I want to understand, because when people my age come to me and confide, like, I really hate this, they, them. And I'm like, what's the big deal? Who cares? So what? Who cares? They want to be that? Great. No problem. I don't care. I don't give a shit. I'll call you whatever you want. Like, it doesn't bother me. So I'm trying to keep up with that stuff. And I know that you guys are too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we actually suggest that writers take acting classes.
Absolutely.
Because I think that being able to write something from the inside out, from the position of how does this person feel, and looking for the subtext, it is part of what it is that we try to do in pivoting to talking about our program, the Lifewriting Premium program. We're into finding a way to express your truth in this particular way, which is writing. But the fact is that acting or sculpting or painting or anything else is just another expression of that art, different elements of craft. So, we've already said that our thing is that if you're willing to write a sentence a day, if you can commit to that and listening to one audio a week, and we go a lot deeper than that, but that's the beginning level. If you can do that at the end of a year, our program is 52 weeks of instruction. Oh, and wow. It is, we've packed everything that we know about not just how to write, but how to be a writer, the life, how to do that and not go crazy. T, say something here.
Whether you are, we had N.K. Jemisin on the show earlier, and she expressed burnout. So whether you are an experienced, published, maybe multiple published writer who is looking for inspiration, or a new writer transitioning from acting, transitioning from your day job, whatever it is, the Lifewriting Premium course is for writers of all levels, and it covers the gamut from writing prose. We like short stories for people who are just starting out, scripts if you're writing scripts, short scripts if you're starting out.
And we do a monthly reading where we analyze one piece of work from one of our students on a Zoom call.
Critique it? That's very fortunate to have you look at your work.
We actually we no longer can do this for clients per se, but we can do it for the group. We can do 1 or 2 stories a month for the group.
Yes.
So they can learn how to critique it for themselves. And it's at www.lifewritingpremium.com. It's a monthly program. It's very reasonable. And we really care about artists and writers. We really do love having an artistic lifestyle. And we're sharing all the pieces of that we know how to do.
I'm
sorry, go ahead.
I just thought of something, Rachel. Fugue State, the short story that we adapted for Shudder in Horror Noire, started out as a Lifewriting Zoom. Basically, we were meeting with students. We had them throw out story areas, and out of that, and then we wrote the story on a Google Doc.
And gave them links to it. They actually saw us developing the story. Then we polished it. Then we sold it. Then we sold it to AMC and converted it. So every step of this was a matter of we're trying desperately to teach how to do this because we love this. We're on fire with this thing.
One of the hardest things, one of the things that I thought would be so easy with writing was getting my voice, my particular voice on the page. And yet, it wasn't as easy as I thought, right? It's not like speaking. You can't just record some shit and hope it turns into a book. So I would encourage, you really can't, trust me. So I would encourage people to consider taking this course because crafting this and having a companion while I was writing would have been the most helpful thing. And it sounds like
Absolutely.
You guys are.
We just, thank you so much. You know, we would hope that, you know, when you've done your next book, would you come on again and talk to us about it?
Oh, yes, of course, because, and just to wrap it up, one of the things I loved about Fugue State that we kind of blew over was it is a lovely observation on religion as well, you know. True. And as Black people, it's a sticky wicket, right? Religion. So they've layered in so many things to Fugue State that I'm going to join their class because no matter what, I've only written one book. And one thing I know about life is I'm in a constant state of becoming.
Well, here's what I can promise you. If you join Lifewriting Premium,
I will.
Give us a chunk of the script that you're working on. And, you know, and we would just love to help you see how we think about these things. How we think about this is as flawed, you know, it's partial, but it's legitimate, and hopefully will help you and those listening evolve your own way of doing this.
By the way, I'm like everyone, where I'm scared and nervous to say this work out, just like I am about an audition. I'm the same way, but I love the idea of writing, especially as I continue on, because I'm not judged by my face or the size of my.
There you go.
So,
but I could say that if you were judged that way, I would expect you to excel in any arena. If those were the judgments, my dear.
It's tough being an actor. It's tough being a creative person, and yet I wouldn't want to be anything else. To be honest.
Understood.
Good for you. Good for you.
And we're people like you. Again, I'm so lucky. You know, not every actor gets to work with writers they respect, like I started off this podcast saying. So again, thank you for letting me portray your surrogate you're
very welcome.
So happy to have hosted you on the podcast. Your energy and your fire are going to mean so much to so many listeners. And it's www.lifewritingpremium.com if you want to join the course. Otherwise, go on, write a sentence a day and be the hero or heroine of your own story.
Be the hero in the adventure of your lifetime. Take care. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye, everybody.